Welcome to the Independence by Design podcast, where we discuss what it means to be a business owner and ways to get unstuck from the day-to-day so we can design a business that gives us a life of independence. I think the C-suite leadership team, where you have a strategic leadership team that can own the outcomes of sales, margins, and cash, is one of the game changers for anybody truly trying to step back, get the monkeys off your back. And it's not only mental real estate, but it's also time back. And then eventually at some point, the CEO spot. And the challenge is, do we go internal and do we promote and develop someone internally? Do we go external? What's an actual roadmap for this that's practical and tangible? And I stumbled across Cyndi Graves. My friend and client Bill gave me her referral because she was a business speaker. And Cyndi and I walked through for an hour and a half her hiring coach process. It is unbelievable. She has scorecards that we walk through. She talks about different assessment tests and why one assessment or personality test doesn't do it justice. We talk about critical thinking and intrinsic motivation. I was so impressed because she put tangible concepts and tools and processes around, I think, a topic that a lot of us get wrapped around the axle on, because we want to believe in our internal people and we want to have these people on our leadership team that can really take us to the next level. But we want to believe so hard that sometimes we lie to ourselves, or we have so much loyalty to our current people and we are afraid of bringing people externally in. It just becomes an emotional mess, honestly. And Cyndi and I walked through this topic, and it was a lot of fun, and I think you're going to get a lot out of it. We screen share, so you can actually see a lot of her stuff on her website. So I really recommend going and checking out. Cyndi's been in this space for decades, got a ton of processes that she's put to this complicated topic, to the point where she knows Gina Wickman, and there's a argument that everybody in the accountability chart should be using some of the tools that Cyndi's walking through. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I know you're going to like this if you're interested in figuring out how to actually get a C-suite that is strategic and offloading a lot of the stuff that you're responsible for. And by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify, yes, I'm wearing a gray shirt and a hat. I forgot my intro and I'm about to head out of town, so I had to get it done. Everybody, you're going to love this episode if you're looking for a way to manage and promote and elevate yourself and the leadership team. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy this conversation with Cyndi. Well, Cyndi, I am excited to have you on. This is going to be fun. I was introduced to you by my client and friend, Bill DeVore. He was in Vistage, saw you present, and he was like, oh my God, you have to meet Cyndi. And our first conversation, I think, went way over because we both were really kind of syncing up how you and your practice and your expertise fit in. And so I'll put a container on it for us because I'm very excited to explore for the audience what you do. And when I look at the owner's operating system, this playbook that I created that hovers on top of EOS for the owner to extract themselves from the operations to the boardroom, there's a lot of these components, Cyndi, of getting their owner's plan. There's this whole phase one of getting their plan together, understanding evaluations. Phase two is about building up the financials, connecting the financials to revenue and to margins and to cash. And then this last phase is elevate. It's all about the people part and getting an executive to be sitting over revenue, margins, and then finance, and then tying them compensation, all this stuff together. But like I got a bunch of clients that are elevating and really rocking a lot of the stuff that we've been doing, to the point where some of them are not even sitting in the operations anymore. And when even that happens, it comes down to, how do I have a people roadmap that is tangible and not just loose, but people that are owning outcomes? I have a tangible way to figure out job descriptions, outcomes, development, succession. And there's been this, and I keep saying to my group, I will constantly be looking for solutions for this for my group. And Bill was like, you got to talk to Cyndi, because he knows that I've been looking for it. And from our conversations, you're wildly different than a recruiter, because you're actually going through and you have actual frameworks on how to assess people, develop people, hold people accountable. So that's kind of the big container why I'm super pumped to have this conversation. Thanks to Bill. You want to just maybe give us a little bit of your background, and then we can just jump in, and I'll steer us to make sure that we're unpacking it the right way.
Sure. I always describe myself as a recovering HR person. And in hindsight, I think I was a consultant all along. I would go into an organization that was a mess. I would put processes and systems in place. Then I'd get bored and I'd go on to the next mess. And so many of my jobs lasted a year, year and a half. The longest one was 3 years.
Must have been a big mess.
It was. And ironically, I left that one. I loved that one, but I left that one because I got engaged to my now husband, and I decided that two incomes from the same place wasn't a good idea. Mm. By the way, he's my integrator. So both
it really works. Yeah.
From the same place. So, but I worked in just about every imaginable industry even then. And now we have exponentially more industries. But I was in, I cut my teeth in HR at Johnson & Johnson in New Jersey. And then I ran a staffing service and worked for a publishing company, a distribution company, a robotics company, worked in the automotive industry, property management industry. The last real job, as my husband calls it, was the robotics industry. Cool. And so when we started with this, the one thing we were not going to touch or have anything to do with was selection. I hated the recruiter process. I hated the search firm business model for a zillion different reasons. And it's a thankless job. Even if you're extraordinary, you can never find somebody fast enough, tall enough, big enough.
Yeah.
Not doing it. And I always relished the position of trusted advisor when I went into organizations. And I wanted to continue being that trusted advisor for clients. And there was always an adversarial feeling whenever even in-house HR was acquiring talent.
What was adversarial about it?
It always felt like hiring managers thought you had a drawer full of humans behind you and you could just pull one out and give it to them when they came in your hey, can I have one extra large bag, no onions? That's not how it freaking works, right? And they took no ownership in sourcing. And I would try to explain, like, I can go try to find the location, but if we're in the robotics company, they want to talk to one of the scientists. They don't want to talk to one of the generalists or one of the recruiters. Yeah. They want to talk to one of the scientists about what the heck we're doing, right? This is ages before AI. So we were on the cutting edge of everything. And so I was trying to explain to them that they needed to really help in the sourcing. And they're like, no, that's your job. And then, 2 weeks later, they're like, yeah, that didn't work. I need a new guy. And and I'm like, you have to take some ownership and you have to provide decent leadership. So if I'm bringing you a superstar, you can't just go plug and play and walk away. That's not how it works. And, I always tell people, it's a lot like having a baby. So if you've ever are you a dad?
Yeah, we got twins, and I just gotta that's I don't know what to think about that analogy.
So think about this. I bet the 8 or 9 months it took for those twins to arrive was crazy. You were on pins and needles, watching what your wife was eating.
Nesting is a thing.
Yeah, it's like you're like hyper, alert and diligent about everything, right? And then the baby comes and you're like, damn, that was a lot of work. And
then it begins.
That was the easy part, because it takes a lot of time, money, and effort to make sure those children become significant independent contributors to society. Similar to acquiring talent in your organization. It takes a lot of time, money, and effort to make sure they're a significant contributor in the culture and production in your business. And it's not just, oh, I hired them today and it's over. That as hard as that is in today's market, that's the easy part. So
yeah, and I think what's so fascinating about people, like what I've hired some horrific hires and some fantastic hires, and like the way I think about people, or like even with me building my coaching groups, it's just this chemistry that has to exist. And like
Yes.
one person's vibe can throw the whole thing off.
Yes.
And whether it's, people that are in Vistage know, or a CEO peer group know what I'm talking about, but even like a person, integrating them into a friend group, it just, that person's chemistry throws everything off. And,
Right.
in a business, we have a unified mission. There's a lot of people that are working together. So there's so much to be said about, like, I think the most important, like, I don't know if you've heard those, the saying, but like the saying where I do believe that I could find, if I go get my group of people that I've worked with in the trenches, you name the business and we could go figure out how to tackle it together.
Yep, for sure.
Because of how important it is. So I think it's the most important investment that people can make.
And we find that organizations who hire exclusively for hard skills will fire for soft skills every time.
Oh, fascinating. Yep.
So giving them the roadmap on and holding their hand through the selection process to make sure they're hiring, because to your point, one bad egg or one person who doesn't quite fit, it's like one tiny little cancer cell in a body.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't take long for it to spread and contaminate the rest. And then you got to take out clean margins to make sure it's all gone.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, and
it's so well put. Yeah. Visceral reaction and visible imagery there.
There were people coming to mind when I said that.
Yeah. Well, and it's the damage that's done in the ripple effect in the culture, that is the margins that has to be cleaned up, whether it's the, 10xing your communication and the vision, which is exhausting, or getting people who hoorah'd again because you broke their trust in hiring someone bad. I mean, like all that, which is really emotionally exhausting, let alone the financial implications of that. And what I was excited when I met you was, I think that there's, the people listening in generally agree with us. Yes. But then there's the like, got it, how? And I've interviewed people in the past about integrating C-suite and all, like, and I hadn't seen anybody that had like an actual process that's tangible and quantifiable like you have. So like, how did you go about, like, what were some of the challenges that you saw? So you did just explain some of them, but like coming up with like, what was your maybe contrarian a view of like, okay, how do I tackle this in a way that's repeatable and quantifiable versus just like kind of the feel goods?
Mm-hmm. So my first job out of college was running a temporary service, and we were number 2 in the world behind Kelly Services. And our branch, because of the adjustments I made in the selection, and I was 22 years old winging it. So they say necessity is the mother of invention, and that's really what it was. Mm-hmm. But we became Profit Center of the Year worldwide. So What happened was we ran a temporary service, and I would get a call for a receptionist. And I need a receptionist who can type 45 words a minute, answer a PBX switchboard with 10 incoming lines, do some data entry. Yeah. Okay, fine. Sure enough, I'd find that. I'd send them on their way. And we had to pay the temp at least for 4 hours of working if they got brought in, no matter how long they stayed. So an hour or 2 after they get hired, I'd get a call. Yeah, she's not it. I'm sorry. Is it the type?
I gave you what you wanted.
PBX? Is it no, she's a little rough. So I got all this soft skill stuff. They were telling me the hard skills they wanted, but they got all the soft skill stuff. So after a while, this was getting exhausting, and we were losing money because I can't keep paying more than I'm worth, right?
Yep.
So I'd get the call. I need a receptionist, yada, yada. Tell me about some of the people you love working with. Tell me about some of the people who make you insane. Who are the best, and I would just pump them for this kind of stuff. And then I started, this was long before they called it behavior-based interviewing. Mm-hmm. And I just started interviewing for all of those traits. So I realized that required, so we went to Profit Center of the Year. It was amazing. That and changing a little bit of our, what was long-term contracts versus the short-term, like somebody no-shows for their 4:00 shift and they need somebody to work till midnight. You can't get them there until 6:30. It was useless. Anyway, so over time, I used that in any other HR department that I went into. I found it was very difficult to teach recruiters who work for me how to interview that way, how to interview the hiring manager.
Why did you find that so difficult?
You know how sometimes you assume that the things that come easy to you should come easy to everybody else?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't.
It's just like the emotional intelligence, EQ, which you think would be common sense is actually not very common.
Exactly.
Which is what a lot of people listening in have.
The emotional intelligence journey that we offer is so popular because it is not common. So that was interesting. And it was almost harder to interview the hiring manager to get what they really wanted. Because you get I'm telling you, just get me somebody who can program an AS400 and it'll be fine. Nobody wants to program an AS400 anymore. So even if they can, they don't want to. So that isn't going to so trying to get to them. But if I found the right programmer, you fired other programmers before who were competent. Why? Why did you fire them? And pushing back on the hiring managers. And most recruiters didn't really want to, I don't want to say they didn't want to work that hard, but they didn't have the ear for it. They didn't know how to ask. They didn't know what they were listening for. I don't know. So fast forward, I wound up having to try to teach all of this, but it was almost on the fly. I had to have most of the interviews with the hiring managers, with my recruiter there to say, okay, now this is what you need to go find. And that was why. Eventually, when I started this business, so my husband and I met in a different business. And we got married, and I started the business a month before we got married. And then 3.5 years later, he joined me because I needed to start putting processes and systems around. I needed an integrator, right? And we knew we could work together because we had before. And he said, Cyndi, the first thing we have to do is take that stuff that's between your ears and put it into replicable processes because we can't scale this way. And by the way, I still wanted nothing to, when I started the business, there was nothing we were going to do in selection because to me, there wasn't a difference between selection and recruiting. And it was a friend of mine who was a CFO that I worked with in property management. And when I started the business, called me. She said, Cyndi, I need your help. I need to hire a controller. I'm like, I don't do that. She goes, yeah, but I really need your help. And I'm like, I'm not doing any recruiting. She goes, no. I'll find the human. I just need you to get in their head and figure them out for me. Make sure it's no mistake. I'm like, oh, I can do that. So my husband started on a path of looking for assessments that could help discern somebody's profile without having Cyndi's brain in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So we found a way to use a suite of assessments. Most people who even use assessments in selection will use a single science, which is a problem. Most of the single science assessments out there are behaviors. Are you an extrovert? Are you an introvert? Are you an analytic or creative? We're all more than one-dimensional. And it's about as negligent as going to a doctor with a really sore arm and he takes your temperature and says, oh, you have a broken arm, you need surgery. And you're like, you can't tell that from a thermometer. You can't.
Yeah.
You can tell
like
maybe I've got an infection because I've got an elevated temp, but until you do x-rays and an MRI, maybe I just need to rest the arm. Maybe we don't need surgery, right? So there's so many other things that could be going on. And that's why we recommend multiple sciences. So we look at behaviors because we know behaviors are important. If it's a job that requires very introverted skills, putting an extrovert in there is going to drain the life out of them and vice versa. But workplace motivators help us understand what motivates somebody, what gives somebody gratification in their work, and what's going to inspire them. And that's going to be more of the culture fit piece. We have something on personal skills. How do they view the world in which they operate? How do they view themselves? And then we use a critical thinking test. So think of the first three, we call them the trimetrics, is telling us how many lanes on the expressway are open. And the critical thinking test is telling us what the speed limit is.
I like it a lot.
So
you combining Colby plus culture index plus a DISC plus a discovery insights or varying degrees. There's so many of these ones out there.
Index, predictive index, OAD, McQuaig, Haig, most of them are they're all behaviors.
Yep.
Colby gets misused a lot. They say it's conative. It's really evaluating how someone processes information when they are in problem-solving mode. Not all the time. So most of the time, if you're a Colby person, most of the time, I am a quintessential quick start.
Me too.
The proverbial hits the fan and I'm in problem-solving mode, like when COVID hit, I am the deepest fact finder you're ever going to find, but that never shows up when I take. So you have to take it with that problem. So it works well in an executive team when they have to problem solve together to have that, but I would not use it in selection. There isn't a job profile component to it like in these other things. So we use DISC for the behaviors. We use workplace motivators. So let me give you, there's 6 motivators. This comes from Marston's work that he did in the 40s or 20, long ago, 100 years ago. And let's say somebody is a high utilitarian. They want a good return on investment, not just money, but time, effort, resources, talent. Probably a lot of your clients are going to have a high utilitarian. So they don't like wasting time. They don't like wasting stuff. They want to be efficient. And they don't have a lot of tolerance. There's also a high sense of urgency. Somebody who has a high social, think of this as society, not socializing. The altruistic motivator, it's self-sacrifice for others. In extremes, you'll have people who will give their lives for other people, like missionaries or firefighters. So think of the high socials being drawn to the not-for-profits and the utilitarians being drawn to the for-profits.
Private equity.
If somebody inadvertently gets in the other spot, right? Or high socials are sweet people and everybody loves them. So somebody said, they're so nice, we should put them in sales. Yeah,
I'm tracking. Yep.
Right. And then there's high theoreticals that love to learn. They might be really good in some environments, not in others. We have one client who's very clear, high theoretical with a utilitarian governor saying, that's enough, we got to get into production. We can't make this perfect. But if you're in an operating room, high theoretical, no governor on the right, might be good. So there's that. And then the Hartman profile helps us understand a lot about EQ, a lot about how one views themselves. There's different components. I'm just going to, it measures so many different personal skills, but let me isolate a couple of them real quick. There's something called freedom from prejudices. Isn't just race, creed, and religion, but it's also status. So if someone has a high freedom from prejudice, they can talk to anybody, a CEO, frontliner, whatever, with comfort and make that person feel comfortable. If somebody has a low freedom from prejudice, say they're a salesperson, they are never calling on the decision maker. It's too terrifying. We can also see what someone's personal accountability is. What is their ability to take responsibility for their own actions and not blame?
I want to see that test.
Yeah, I'll give you a complimentary one.
Yeah, because
we'll go through it.
So all of these are
that's all bundled into the trimetrics, and then the critical thinking test. Now, all 4 of those can be taken by the candidates in an hour or less. Once you tip over that hour line, we send a candidate into assessment fatigue, and they get cranky, and you don't. So anyway, we use assessments, but it really all starts with the definition phase. So John was the one who. John is my husband is very, very, very process oriented and system oriented. Like I can tell when something needs a process, you don't want me designing it, right? And so I'm like, no, it needs another step here. Or we used to do a core values email exercise towards the end of the process, and then we're finding out that we were knocking out 30 to 40% of our clients' candidates. I'm like, we got to move that up front. Like before anybody goes in for an interview, let's not waste the client's time interviewing. So right after the phone screen, they get the core values email exercise. And let me share my screen with you.
And maybe before you do, Cyndi, maybe we can orient ourselves again, because like when I think about it, and I'll make sure to pull this up in the intro too, is like what you guys are doing, maybe kind of just snapshot of like what you're doing and how that compares to recruiting and all that stuff, just in the high level, because then as we're going through these different components, I think it'll have a lot of context.
Yep. Okay. So we consider ourselves behavior experts at work. You can see the slide. What that means is we get humans in the workplace, but we believe we can put processes in to give our clients more predictable results. Most of our work is housed under the Leadership Academy. The idea is everything starts with self-discovery. Where are we now? And then through structural learning, coaching, practical application, doing it themselves, we teach clients how to make sure they're hiring superstars and how to get superstar performance out of them. So the superstar performance comes down to the leadership, right? So if you've really hired a superstar and they're not performing well, it's because of something else other than them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always go to the first round NFL draft pick. How many first round first picks? Fan.
Got the pup.
Yeah. First round first picks. How many of them have been superstars their first year in the NFL?
I'm not a big sports guy, so I know it's probably not as many as people want.
I've yet to have anybody name one when I've asked that.
There you
question.
go. Well, so I'm a normie, finally.
Yeah. So, but think about what we do to this kid. We change his boss, we change his coworkers, we change the rules of the game, we change his playbook, we change his conditioning, his nutrition, we may relocate him away from family. And when 3 months after he graduates from college, he does not take the worst team in the league out of the ashes like a phoenix, we say, yeah, he
sucks. Yeah.
Maybe it's all that other stuff we did.
Yeah. I love it so much.
So first hire the superstar, and then we have leadership essentials. We have a strategic leadership alignment. We have visionaries bringing on integrators without making a mistake. There's a lot around succession planning there, and the emotional intelligence journey, which that's the only one that can be used whether you're in leadership or not. And it's really amazing. So it's really about getting the right people and aligning the talent to accomplish the goals the organization's going towards. That's always been my passion. I still remember going to work in it was one of the robotics companies, and I was there for a couple of days, and I asked somebody, how do we make money? What? I said, how do we make money? What department are you in? I'm in human resources. Then why do you want to know? I'm like, how can I help you align the talent to accomplish the goals if I don't even understand how this company makes money? So eventually somebody said, go talk to the paint guys. So I went down to the paint department, and that's the only department that made money for us. And paint, so you can think of painting cars, but it's the same robot that's used in car washes. It's the same process. And they made money so the rest of us could work, every department. And so one December, there were 2 openings that my recruiter was dealing with. And I'm like, great, she can handle that. We came back after the holidays. Nobody told us. On January 2nd, we were getting 92 more openings. I had 94 openings. And I had 1 recruiter working for me. And I went to my boss and said, I need more recruiters. And he said, you're not going to get any more. And I'm like, come on, how am I going to? It's like, don't worry about it. Just do them as you can.
Figure it out.
So I went and I got these giant whiteboards, and I listed by department every job and called up a hiring manager. And I said, that's your department. Pick the first one you want us to work on. I need them all. I understand that. We got to prioritize because I got 94, right? And so I called the paint guys up, and about 20 of those were service technicians. So they were going out to install the robots. And he said, Cyndi, if I don't have these service technicians, we can't install the robotic systems, which means we can't invoice. So I was thinking, how the hell are we going to get these? So I kept thinking, I went back to him, and I'm like, all right, because I already knew now this was the department that made us money. I figured that out. So I got a deal because nobody could tell them no because they made the money. I said, we got to hire 3 recruiters. They all come out of your budget. They won't work on anybody else's stuff but yours. I'll
well played.
I'll direct them. I'll supervise them. But they got to, I don't care if they work in your department, up in my department, but they got to come out of your budget because I'm not allowed any. He's like, done. I'll give you 4. All right. Because he knew after these 20, there were going to be more.
Yep.
My boss lost his mind. But we need to make money. Like, so to me, that was, I always wanted to make, I had a passion around the talent and the business. I didn't care about the compliance stuff, the benefit stuff. Ugh, all that transactional stuff just didn't jazz me. So I had always been passionate around that. And that's probably why my husband and I hit it off when we met, because he was an ops guy. And so he used to refer to it as, I'm like, did you open that envelope that came into your office? That HR junk? I'm like, no. So
That's well, what I think about what you just said is what the people that are going through the ownership operating system and tying the operations to their goals of cash flow and value and time. By doing all the work that I mentioned that my clients are doing, they have a fully articulated goal and plan for someone to fit into. So I think there's a lot of misfiring that happens because people think that that's going to happen afterwards, and then everybody's trying to figure something out. And so we're trying to eliminate a lot of that ambiguity ahead of time, so that way, then to your example, the people have a clear understanding of what they're looking for. But then the question is, how do I assess my internal team? How do I know are they capable of getting built up? How do we transition them to have new accountabilities? So it's kind of this like leveling up of the current team, assessing them over time, and then trying to slot people in when the internal people aren't able to then get the thinkers, people that own their outcomes. And it's just this, it's like, I can say this like I have for a long time, but then it's like, how do we actually approach this in a systematic way that's not just guessing and just throwing shit against the wall? So the goal is like, how do we actually take this so when the recruiting outside happens, it's like very understandable. This is why we're doing this. We tried all these other things. When we hire the person, this is the type of behavior, skill set. Some of those might be weaknesses, but we know exactly how we're going to accomplish those weaknesses and how we're going to integrate them. And I think it was Bill when he said, like, you have something, because he's got his GM that he wants to elevate to the point where he can actually, like, he just took a month sabbatical. He wants to keep doing that. So he's like, but what am I supposed to do with Tina? Right? Like, what is the process of management and development that I thought was very, like, your system was very attractive to him about that. So I don't know if that helped, because I heard your story and I was like, okay, I can see how the business alignment with then the people alignment becomes kind of the container that you're trying to fit everything into.
Right. And it is because when the business alignment exists first, then it's a lot easier to get the people aligned. It's a little bit harder, in my mind, to get the people aligned when you're building a team of strangers. So to the point, you have I call them my island. Like, if I were stranded on an island, who would be the people I'd want with me? So my island people, like, we could take on anything, right? But if you don't know that you're bringing on strangers, you got to start with, what are we
doing?
Accomplish?
Yeah.
Right. I know Jim Collins says, first who, then what? And to a certain extent, I agree. But if you are in rapid growth mode, that's a different type of person than once you come through serious growth. And now you got to take a step back and put some processes and systems together to make sure you're not held together with bubble gum and Band-Aids. So it's a different type of skill set. And if you hire the wrong skill set at the same time, or you get through this, so this is what our strategic alignment leadership program does. If you come through this rapid growth and you got to put the processes and systems in place, and you still have everybody just hitting the gas, that's going to be a problem. We worked with one client, started off at 250 million, got up to 750 million. They were dying to use the B word. I mean, dying. And we're like, oh man, like, we could see bubble gum and Band-Aids. It was ready to implode. It was one of those Jenga things that got way too high for its own, right? And they just wanted to be $1 billion. So they made this deal with this private equity company that inserted a bunch of money to help them get there fast, and they imploded. They just completely imploded. There was
you're putting rocket fuel on a trike.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Just couldn't handle it. So So I can show you some of our process.
Yeah, let's do it.
Bill really enjoyed.
Yeah, because you get, and that's what, I kept finding you have like sheets and strategies and all these like ways of actually, and for the people listening in, we'll talk through it so you can hear it. And then if otherwise, you can always go to the YouTube or Spotify.
Right. So in solutions, I'm going to go to the hiring process coach, but in the Leadership Academy, just to give you the context for all of this. So the outer ring, we have the hiring process coach. So that's getting the right people on board. The next ring is the accountability system, how to hold them accountable to perform the things you hired them to do. And then the other things, the emotional intelligence journey, leadership essentials, strategic leadership, visionary integrator catalyst, really just addresses the people who are in place. So we're going to go back to solutions, and I'm going to go down to the hiring process coach. And there's videos explaining things for everybody in here. There's process maps. So when we're in our process map, so one of the things that Bill and his group really enjoyed was the scorecard. And in this scorecard, when we're creating it for clients, it takes 2 hours-ish sessions to create, sometimes 90 minutes to create the scorecard. Bring everybody together, the stakeholders. So if Bill wanted to take more sabbaticals, and he had, did you say Tina or Lena?
Yeah, Tina.
And he wants to get crystal clear. He wants Tina to be crystal clear on the job that she's going to do. We would have Bill in the room, we'd have Tina in the room, and everybody else who has been reporting to Bill and Tina, who understands what it will take to do the job well and who understands or be impacted if the job's done poorly. So we facilitate debate in these 2-hour sessions. And we start with the reporting structure and we get into laundry list of all the tasks and activities we want somebody to do. It does not work well to take an existing job description and jerry-rig it into this format.
Well, I think it even applies more so for the owner operator who is a jack of all trades. When you're probably going to have a lot of that to-do list probably allocated into various roles instead of just one. Right.
So we, in between the two sessions, the two of us facilitating it, will take the laundry list and break that ideation into the 3 to 5 accountability systems that they see here on the left.
When you're doing this, Cyndi, do you do it from current state or a point in time in the future that you're striving for?
Point in time in the future that we're striving for.
Okay.
Usually after somebody's passed the learning curve and it's up and running, which is a really good point. Remind me if I forget to tell you what happens the first week they're on board.
Yep.
Okay. So never more than 5 categories. The average brain can't remember more than 5 things at any given time. And you know this if you've ever gone to the grocery store without a shopping list. So we bring everybody back together, and neurologically, the brain processes things differently when it sees like items chunked together. So as soon as they see it broken up like this, they go, oh, I can't believe we forgot whatever. Okay, let's add it in, move it around, whatever. Everybody, believe it or not, everybody will agree with what's here on the left-hand side.
So what we've got here is for an executive assistant, president support, team future, 10X company, special projects, HR activities. You're just trying to chunk out like all of the activities in bigger buckets, regardless of the position, what it might be, where they're going to be interacting and what departments and activities.
And these are chunked. This is a Cyndi word. I don't know how else to explain it. By what brain space is needed to do that job.
I like it. Yep.
So sales jobs are easier to explain. If somebody has to do some prospecting, like go out and find leads. So that's cold calling, it's networking, it's all this outward facing, go find them. That's very different than the nurturing of the existing clients, right? The difference.
I even think about like, I got a client right now, we're in the market for a sales director, and it's like, it's going to be, leadership and accountability to the team. We need someone to actually develop some processes and procedures and do some data management, do some planning, report to the board and come to the board meetings with us. So there's different mental spaces and, categories that you're saying that they're going to have to do, and they have to be able to do all of them. We can't not have some of those.
Right. So the 3 jobs that are the toughest to do across to hire right, the 3 jobs that are hardest to hire right for across organizations: sales, HR, and executive assistant.
Why is that, do you think?
Everybody thinks, oh, I just need a sales guy. Oh, he was a great sales guy over there. Oh, they do the same stuff we are. Let's bring him over here. You have no idea if this is because it was an easy thing to sell, if it was the rest of the team that carried this person's weight, or if they really were awesome and you
business
don't
to consumer, business to business. Is it rep manufacturing versus direct to, I mean, all of the nuances.
And remember, you can only have 5 categories. So think about, is it prospecting? Is it customer service? Is it project engineering? Is it project management? Is it collections? Is it education? Is it training? Is like, what all is going into this sales guy? Is it public speaking? There's so many different components that go into sales. And if you aren't clear on that, so similar to the role your client has, we were helping with one of our clients who had already hired a search firm. And I remember walking in and I'm like, that's okay. We work with search firms so long as it isn't X company. And they're like, oh, it is X company. I'm like, oh. I'm like, all right, we'll try. All I'm saying is we'll try. And if we run into roadblocks, you tell me how you want to handle it. Okay. So we got the whole team together and we built out this vice president of sales. And they knew they had some pretty good salespeople, but they needed direction for them. They needed processes and systems. They needed more out of the people they had. They did not need this person. In fact, if you see, we go through priorities and percentage of time. There was only 5% of the time that this VP of sales was supposed to be client facing. And that
so you're taking the 5 categories, you're prioritizing each one of the categories and putting a percent of time spent in each category.
Correct.
Love it.
There was only 5% of the time spent client facing. Between managing the team, which was about 30%, because there were a lot of systems and processes that needed to be put in place, and 20% mentoring and coaching and developing them, which is a different skill set than managing them, right? There was 50% of the time working with the team. And then there was some executive stuff, right? The search firm kept sending rainmakers. And a couple of things happened. One, the executive team never got seduced by hiring these rainmakers because they had already agreed on what.
Yeah, I love it.
Role.
Yep. No distraction.
That helped a lot. But finally, my team who was helping with the interviewing was getting frustrated. I'm like, can I talk to one of the candidates? They said, this one guy was just as frustrated as you are. You might as well talk to him. So I asked him, like, did anybody show you this job scorecard? And he said, no. And I said, well, if you look at it, what are you thinking about the job? And he said, that's over 50% of my time dealing with people. I don't like people that much. Like,
yeah,
well, that's a problem. And he said,
at least he was able to say, because otherwise, if someone doesn't articulate it, you're having to take those behavioral science and all those tests to at least reconcile the truth of what they're saying or displaying versus the scorecard that you got here. You're trying to triangulate everything.
Correct. So what was interesting is I said, well, why do you think they sent you out to us? Because we don't need a rain. He's like, I'm a rainmaker. That's what I do. That's my superpower. And I'm like, but they don't need a rainmaker. And he said, they told me this team didn't really know what they needed and he knew better. Okay, then. So we got back to the drawing board.
I got egos involved. There are people trying to make a commission. Yep.
Right. So in this case, what's interesting is percentage of time and priorities have no correlation. If you think about that sales role, sometimes the number one priority is about 10% of the time, which is putting the sales plan together. What market do we want to go after? Which product is our loss leader? Like you got to lay out the plan, or a salesperson will look like a water bug. Yep. So maybe the number one priority, even though it's the smallest percentage of time, but if you don't do that well, it throws everything else off.
Yep. I love it so much. Yep.
And then we create the success factors. How will we know if this individual has done their job well enough to keep it? These are not the holiday wish list. This is the minimum threshold to keep your job. This earns you your salary. So all of these have to be met. Okay. So I'm going to click back here, and I'm not going to go through. You got anybody?
How many people when they're doing their success outcomes? are doing tasks instead of outcomes? Like, do you have to help people, like force them to get to outcomes, or
Yeah.
how do people attack that you see?
Well, we're coaching them through this as part of the
Mhm.
2 sessions. And we tell them, like, every one of these has to start with a verb, action verb. Each one of these has to be worded in past tense, because then I'm going to show you how this turns into a quarterly performance review.
Love it.
One has to be answered. Are we on track or off track? Yes.
Mhm.
No.
Yeah, and as you're moving away from this too, for you and for the audience, the way I see the puzzle piece fitting together is, if an owner knows what they want for their time, their owner's distributions, and their valuation, if they have then a financial model tied together, and then they have their revenue, their margins, their overhead, and everything tied together, then it's the KPIs of the people should be tied to these KPIs that you're talking about, and visible in the financials. And you and I have talked in our last call that, Gino, and we're both very familiar with EOS, and I think both of our systems have figured out a way to be complementary to that. Where, like, then you look at the scorecard, and now we have context and a goal pegged to that scorecard. So the KPIs and the accountability that you're doing have a reason behind them. They're not subjective.
Right. And each of these category titles will simply move into the accountability chart.
Got it. Yep.
Gino actually used this process with us to bring on his very first implementers.
Love it.
So it works hand in glove with that. So we're going to go back here. And I'm not going to do anything that has an underlined, has a sample. So if somebody wants to look in and deeper, you just go to the website, you can check it out.
And I'll put the link in, and what we're looking at is a process chart, and the define. Then the second part is screen, and then analyze and accelerate. So there's just a bunch of activities and details in each of those. But, within the hiring process coach, you're doing this first, so that way the momentum towards the right starts self-reinforcing.
Yes. We're actually hearing, one of the complaints we're hearing from people who are not implementing this process, and we're seeing in Glassdoor comments, is candidates complaining that they're feeling like they got a bait and switch on the jobs. They went in to talk about one job, it turned into something else. Well, part of what happens is, in the absence of this much clarity up front, I think I know what I want in this controller role. And then they talk to a controller and they're like, oh, that's pretty cool. I should add that in. And then they talk to another candidate and like, oh, man, that would be cool. Let me add that in, right? And so it just morphs. These people aren't trying to do a bait and switch. They have no clue what they want if there isn't somebody facilitating that conversation to get that.
Yeah. And I also think, what contributes to that, Cyndi, is, as you and I have, we talked about a couple of recruiters that we both know as well, that some of them, I think, that do a pretty good job, is you, or people that are in that space doing a good job, had the advantage of large numbers, the law of large numbers, where when you look at an org chart and you stack up an org chart against the size of a company and the growth rate of a company, you have an understanding, I believe, and I've learned this the hard way too, just from sheer volume of exposure. When with the turnaround I went through with the family business and some of the other companies that I had, that people became until that level of exposure, it was all made up for myself, versus saying, hey, these positions have, just like a sports team, you will say this player does these things at this size company with this growth rate in this industry. And so many of us that are founder, owner, operators have not had that level of exposure. So you don't understand how to reconcile it against the truth of what the average is. And I think that's what you bring to the table. And then you throw a process on it like this and it becomes, rocket fuel. But I just think, when you have the ability to discern things that are standards versus not.
Yes. The advantage is because so many business owners have felt betrayed isn't the right word, misled by somebody else's experiences before. They're still a little gun shy. So the fact that we can show them with a process how to do it and take their input into the process, I can't tell you how many business owners after the definition phase call me the next day and say, that was the best night's sleep I've had in a long time.
Yeah, you're taking the ambiguity out of it. And like, I think you're right. It's not necessarily betrayal, but it's like, I've done it where it's just the sheer level of exhaustion of like, it's emotional exhaustion of like getting a new friend and introduced to the friend group. And then like all of a sudden everybody hates that person. Now you have to like recalibrate expectations, and it's just, and then it's the time, and it's and back to your profile of the people listening is urgent, wasting time. And that's like all the things that we hate because we don't have enough of it. And so just spending the time clarifying all of this stuff. And that's why it syncs up with my material, because, you know, the Abraham Lincoln thing, if we have 4 hours to cut down a tree, you're going to spend the first 3.5 sharpening it. So it's not a sledgehammer, it's actually an axe. And it's just so much, the return on investment is unquantifiable mentally and financially, I think.
Right. And it's not just, to our point, it's not just getting the hire, it's making sure this person performs extraordinarily well afterwards.
Generate more cash. That's like, that's the whole point. Yep.
Yeah. So the other thing that then once that's done, we then create the avatar is what we call it. We build out what would the ideal human look like to do this job in their culture using these 3 assessments. The behaviors is DISC, the culture fit is the workplace motivators, and then the personal skills. So if you click on this, just to show people real quickly, there are the personal skills that we talked about. That includes the personal accountability and stuff like this. I really will give you that complimentary assessment. I can't debrief you on it. I need another assessment. Anything that's labeled very important or critical to the job. I'm going to scroll real fast. So if you're seasick, close your eyes. Then we provide behavior-based interview questions that tie to those characteristics. Oh, cool. So this goes back to what I did in my very first job running that temporary service, but we were able to create these behavior-based interviewing questions once we knew which characteristics are we screening for, right? And so it goes through the same with the DISC and the workplace motivators. Only then do we let our clients start talking about hard skills. In the absence of having a process like this, most people start with, oh, we need somebody who's had, give you an example. We had a client headquartered in Milwaukee. They had a second location in Texas, and they needed a new GM. This is before they met us. And they said, oh, wow, he's all the way across the country. There's nobody else from the executive team there. We need somebody with at least 25 years experience running a manufacturing plant. And they need this much, and they're going through this whole thing. So we show up and we go through this whole process, only to find, and they were already posting for this job with 25 years running a plant. And I said, we learned that first of all, it is a 25-person plant, 25 humans. So that means you have a level of supervisors and all the worker bees. That's it. That's your hierarchy. How bored is a senior plant manager who's used to 25 years of increasing responsibility going to be running a plant this size? So once we got through building out the job scorecard and building out the human, then we said, okay, if they've had 3 to 5 years of manufacturing experience and at least 5 years experience managing people who led others, that's enough permission to play. We'll at least talk to them.
I think that this is going to be even more important. And I'm curious on your take on this, because this whole hard versus soft skills and all the work that you're doing to quantify the soft skills, I believe with AI, this is going to be 10 times more important, because I'm personally seeing that soft skills are way more rare than people have thought. And like me, like I was on that call with we were talking to the recruiter for the sales director, and because they're in the technical space, and like, how much is the technical knowledge? I'm like, I don't know, like, God, if people can learn, I mean, like, you have freaking AI. I mean, not to say that they can't know any, but like, people can, the right person with all of the right intrinsic motivation, the right skill set, the right cultural fit. It's like the ability to learn now technical skills is democratized like it's never been before.
Right. Yes. So And imagine how much more they were going to pay for somebody with 25 years managing a plant versus what we needed, right?
Yeah.
So
doesn't that also apply then to the internal people? And maybe as you get to like whether it's internal versus external, because like, I mean, your internal people, if it's the right person too, I think that there's probably more internal candidates than most people think because they're, they're biased towards this. Oh, I need this technical resume, even though like it's not going to actually get them what they want. And they might have that someone sitting right there with them.
Right. So typically at this point, so we just finished this up with a client last week. And when we went in, they said, we don't know if we have an internal candidate or not. So they said, we might now that we got done with this. And so the first step is show the internal candidates the job scorecard.
No, but
this is what the job is. Are you even interested? Because sometimes they look at this and it's like, wait, 25% of the time is special projects. I want more predictability than that. Or 40% of the time, I got to babysit Cyndi. Right?
Yep.
So when you can get clarity around what the job is, there are some people who will deselect themselves. Same is true.
With no resentment that they didn't get the job and they can, Right.
So we even tried to, the biggest argument we get with search firms is, please show them the job scorecard before you waste anybody's time at the client company. Show the candidate the scorecard to see if they're even interested. Because I'm telling you, when the resumes come in, we teach our clients to send the job scorecard out to say, we'd like to schedule a phone conversation with you. It's going to last 20 to 30 minutes to discuss the job scorecard. Sometimes those people just ghost the client. Fine. And some people will say, oh, I'm sorry, that's not what I thought the job was going to be. Also fine. Right.
Yep.
But the sourcing is interesting. Even most of the search firms that you and I talked about the other day proudly and exclusively use LinkedIn for searching for even executive roles. But what we have found when our process teaches the clients, remember, we coach them all the way through all of this and hold their hand, how to create a job posting that describes more the human we're looking for and less about the job. It lures the right type of person forward. And then the phone screen, the core values email screen is really wild. I told you we moved this up front. Everybody who's listening to this can start using this for free. Just download the sample, pull out our core values, put yours in. It asks people to describe a specific situation in which they have demonstrated these core values.
Oh, I like that.
You think you're giving them the answers. Ryan, people who cannot internalize the core value can't make up details. They start generalizing and
totally. I was in an interview process.
They can't ask chat to come up with something because you still need an example, right?
Yeah, you need to have actually lived experience for that. And I've seen that unfold.
Or
in real
even
time.
Executives who can't get their point across in an email. Still a problem because I'm not
right.
So
quick question on like the screening and like the attracting people. I've had this belief for quite some time now, and I know a lot of my clients are too busy for us to really explore this at scale. But like I believe that when we look at some of the companies that are thriving, where the visionary has become a content machine.
Yeah.
If we would just want to use Elon, who's the most dramatic example, like. People are like saying no to $1 billion packages from Zuckerberg to go work for someone with a mission because they get to know someone online. And I mean, if you just took the pool company or the landscape company, the HVAC company, the commercial cleaning, whatever it is, people having content out there, when I think that we are going into a labor crisis for the next 5+ years, if we were both following like ITRs and the demographics, having an outbound where like it's not just for marketing to attract prospects, but to actually get people to see themselves inside your organization, I think is something that I think is way underlooked at this point.
So it's funny you bring that up. I was talking to someone earlier this morning who is a brand guy about something else. We weren't talking about our business. It was just a colleague. And I said, I remember when I was in-house HR, And I worked for a company that was was publicly traded and was having a hell of a time recruiting. I didn't understand what was going on, but we had a problem that we should not have had. So I went to the marketing department and I said, I need help. And they're like, why? I said,
What?
sales guys are selling to people who need to buy from the company. HR is selling to people who need to buy into the company.
Love it. Yep.
Both of us need marketing help. And they looked at me and I became best buds with the VP of marketing. We created more cool stuff. But those people who don't have something as simple as a careers page, I don't care if you just pull out your iPhone and videotape some of the people who love working for you to ask them what they really love.
And don't you think it's it's not just that professional photography bullshit. It's actually people can snuff out the real authentic stuff versus not. So don't overthink it. Have someone pull out their phone, like you said, and talk. There are people that I know, the podcast editing company that I work with, they do a lot of internal podcasts for companies where it's a great way to communicate the vision. It's awesome. Yeah, people are just looking to share what's going on, to people's spouses, to the market, to it's for sure powerful.
And then the interview is when people are going to use one or two questions from each of the categories here. Once the candidate gets assessed, you'll see there are the same bullet points here. The first three match these, plus we had a critical thinking test. Now, I'm not expecting any of you guys to test your vision on this or become expert graph readers, but that allows us. Now, mind you, when you're using 4 sciences, nobody is going to match it perfectly, which is okay because none of us are actually perfect, right? So our goal is to help you figure out the imperfections so you can decide if it's a deal breaker or you can create a workaround. It's like any other gap analysis. So on the left, we have what was needed in the job. And then we can.
So on the left, you got the very important, the important.
Yep. And then the scores for that.
Yeah.
The motivators, the DISC score. So this allows us to compare candidates against each other, against the job, and against the national mean. The reason this is so critical is if we are starting with what's needed in the job, we understand with John, goal achievement and personal accountability are off. Well, go back. If you asked 1 or 2 questions in each category from the beginning, now in the secondary interviews and in reference checks, you are going to ask every one of those questions in that category. So one of my favorite personal accountability questions, because that's a biggie for me. If you don't have personal accountability and you come to work for the Metis Group, it will end quickly and poorly. So
I think I don't know. I don't know when that doesn't apply, but I'm trying.
So one of my favorite questions is, give me an example of a time you had to admit you made a mistake and how did you handle it? I can just as easily use that in a reference by saying, Ryan, can you give me an example of a time Bill had to admit he made a mistake and how did he handle it? So once you got the questions, you can tweak it real easily. So if the first candidate turns out to be a fantastic match, and our coach is coaching you through this, ask these questions, listen for these answers, you come back going, this is amazing. The coach is probably going to tell you, pull the trigger and make the hire. Do not wait to find 2 other mediocre people against which to measure this person. You're starting with the ideal in the job. Historically, you've needed 3 or 4 candidates to compare.
Just to get a feel, because you're not objectively doing it. Yep.
And to make matters worse, if you are fishing in a contaminated pool, you may pick the least sick fish. But
so God, I've done that.
Right?
This is okay. We're just going to justify it because everybody else sucks.
Better than the rest. It's better than the rest. I can't tell you how many times I heard that when I was in HR. So it allows you to figure out then where to do performance checks, the additional interviews, and then we have a whole onboarding process. Now, let me go back for a second and talk about the internal candidates. Let's say you have an internal candidate who says once they look at the scorecard, oh, yeah, baby, this is, yeah. But you're a little spooked about how they would handle one of those categories.
Okay, yep.
So perfect time to have a conversation. Ryan, I'm fired up. You're interested. I'd like to see you continue with the organization. I'm a little spooked about how you're going to handle this one category. Tell me why you're not bothered by that, or what support you're going to need to be prepared for that. So now it's a different conversation.
Totally framed up the right way.
You're not going to need to do the phone screen. You know their background. You're not going to need to do a core values email exercise. God knows you ought to know if this person demonstrates your values
not,
or not. Yeah. But I would give them an assessment because nobody's perfect. Yep. And then you can still go in then and put a development plan together. If both of you agree, this is where you want to go. Okay, this is where you're going to have to commit to some development if we're moving forward. Now, what we find, and this is the part Bill DeBoer's Vistage group really loved, is we were talking about succession planning. And the problem with succession planning is if I say, okay, Ryan's getting ready to retire. We got to find Ryan 2.0. Where are we going to find the next Ryan? All right, let's send a search firm out to go hire us our next Ryan. First thing that happens is the person comes in, and what does everybody say? It's not
Ryan.
Right? We've just set that person up for failure. The real question we want to ask is, when Ryan isn't here any longer, what's the work we need done at, to your point, some point in the future? At some point in the future. So there may be a lot of things. The odds are good. There's a lot of things you're
probably shuffling around a bunch of different position scorecards too, because some other scorecards are going to get a new priority or new bucket that they hadn't had before because the owner operator is probably doing that.
Yeah. Or maybe we go, okay, Susie can do this part, but I don't think she can do the other part. So maybe Joe can do those parts. And then we take this part away from Susie's and put it. So now you can mix and match and give people new opportunities for growth, new challenges. Everybody's excited about this. They all have something to say about the future. And they're all not terrified to that trust piece that you're going to bring somebody in who doesn't stand a prayer of being the next Ryan.
Oh my God. My client, Ryan, needs this because he's out of the business, but his wife, Robin, is head of HR. And she's like the cultural fabric and glue. So they're trying to figure out how to get her out of the business.
And they're terrified.
Yeah. And I mean, there was a really good candidate. There's a lot of, they're more process driven than most because of how long he's been at a lot of this stuff. But I mean, I think doing what you're saying, it would demystify that anxiety of like, where is that anxiety placed? There's probably one bucket out of the 5 that is probably some of the time, but high priority. And they don't, there's probably some good use case to like quantify it.
And there may be, if they're not selling the business, there may be a piece of it. She's like, I can still keep this piece.
Very, very, very well said. And actually that is, 2/3 of my clients, they actually just want to run the company from the boardroom. And like, I think it has a lot of flexibility to say, what do you want to keep? Like, this is the highest importance, lowest time, because a lot of it's strategic thinking, which I think then we can map then to like was what I do, Cyndi, in some of my owner's roadmap and owner's scorecard is map out your time and your operator role, and then where are you spending it, and then what do you want to get rid of. And that's why I was so excited when you started pulling that stuff out, because we can start to quantify, like we can start shoveling off the stuff and the whole buy our time back. But then I think what I've watched with some of my higher or the more elevated people, it's not a lot of time investment, but it's very important.
Right.
And then when they get rid of the other shit, it's like, oh, I wouldn't mind keeping this because I got no reason to get rid of it, which then impacts the candidates that they're trying to recruit.
Yes, for sure. So when we are helping a visionary find an integrator, we will not do it without first building out the future job scorecard of the visionary. It's part of our visionary integrator catalyst. If you went here, it's in that.
Are you figuring out how to reshuffle that other stuff to other people then too? Because you're probably looking at then like multiple jobs to figure out how to catch all those balls.
Well, usually if they figure, whether it's an internal person or not who's coming into integrator role, but getting clarity around what that visionary is going to be, because every visionary is different. So if every visionary is different, then to your point, you have to complement it. Some visionaries came up through sales, some came up through engineering, some through finance. So the last thing you want to do is duplicate that strength in the other person. You want it to complement, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But the other challenge you have is if the visionary is not fired up about what they're going to do in the future.
Yeah. Yep.
A hell of a time letting go. So you'll get 12, 18 months in, and the new integrator feels like they're a substitute teacher. They still don't have anybody reporting to them.
Such a good analogy.
And so they're like, yeah, I'm out. So having when that person who's been stung by thinking they were going to get to run the company goes for the next job, when they see one of our clients has the visionary scorecard or sandbox defined and he's fired up about it and can't wait to get to it, but you got to take this other stuff on, that's pretty cool.
And I will actually add to the good people that I'm watching, the C-suite people that I'm watching get hired are actually mandating that. So like, I think it's actually so self-reinforcing where if someone doesn't have this stuff done, they're not even going to find the right people because the right people are going to out them without them even knowing it. Yes. So it's like, it's almost like, just doing this stuff will start, it's like the whole energy, like you start attracting the things in the universe that you want.
Yes. So one of the things I told you earlier is about what we do in the first quarter. So in the first quarter, we will take the job scorecard and modify it to what has to be done that first quarter when they're learning the business. So we'll lock the first thing in so it doesn't get changed. And then we say, okay, let's agree with now that we know the person and what they're bringing with, what has to be done. And our coach will go through with them and make sure any updates, are there updates, percentage of time, priorities? Is there
so for the people listening, we're looking at the scorecard again, but it's just modified. So we've got the 5 buckets. We got the priorities for each bucket, the percentage for each bucket, the success factors for each bucket. And then we now have new columns that's on track. Yes.
On track. Yes. This is INC. It's a horrible color, which either means incomplete or inconsistent. Okay. So sometimes the first time somebody's doing something, they need more time to do it. Right?
They need another rep or two.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Sometimes when we have some of our clients who will move it from a quarterly review to a monthly review if they're in a very dynamic situation. So we have one client who is expanding to another. They have 2 brewery locations. They're adding a third. And so they got to work with architects and zoning boards, and they have to bring on 120 team members and all this other kind of stuff. So between the visionary and the integrator, they're updating their cards every month to make sure there's no duplication of efforts and nothing slips between the cards.
Yeah, I like that. Ooh, that duplication of efforts. That's a good use of this. Yeah, I like that.
And there might be some things that we just got to say, look, this is not applicable for this next quarter while we're focused on that.
Okay.
It also allows you to put notes in as the quarter is progressing, because how long do you think the average supervisor remembers their direct report's performance looking backwards?
Yeah, I mean, it's not much.
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Unless there was something dramatic. So if you know you can be making notes, and so can they, so you guys don't forget important things. And then at the bottom, what did you accomplish last quarter? What are you going to accomplish next quarter? Often rocks relative to EOS.
Yep.
What did you do for personal development, and how did you demonstrate our core values? So we've got you're doing the stuff to keep your job, and you're the right type of human. So we're looking at both.
It's awesome.
And then it clicks, it updates, saves that, and creates another clean one. So it really makes a difference when we can now focus, okay, now the person's here. They can't do the whole job right now. Yep. They have to learn a lot. So what's success going to look like at the end of the first quarter? So I'm trying to remember.
What are some of your thoughts around coaching and development around weaknesses, and what can be coached around? How do you approach coaching around, whether it's soft skills or hard skills? And the reason I think about this, Cyndi, is so many people that I work with, and myself included, they lean towards loyalty to their internal people. Even if they hire someone, they lean towards keeping them longer than they should for all the values, which is why I like working with my clients. And having this objective way, I think, is a good start. I mean, it's probably 80% of the equation is now it's objective, but where to focus on the development and how to do that. I think there's a lot of times that like the good leaders don't necessarily know what they're doing to do that. But then it's like, so what are your thoughts about coaching, developing up, and how to identify that and work through it?
So the first thing is, I don't think it's a good use of anybody's time to take something that's a true weakness and try to make it a strength. I do think if it's a liability, you got to stop it from being a liability. I don't know if that's isolating it, just increased awareness, surrounding yourself with others who can make up for that, whatever. Oftentimes we find that if an employer has someone who had been a good employee at some point, and they are no longer performing at the same level, but gosh, they bleed the core values, then oftentimes what we'll suggest is let's define the job scorecard for what needs to be done in the future. And we say to the person, this does not take away from anything you've done for us for all these years, but it's only fair for you, because we think most people's mind reading skills are not great, to define what we're going to need in the future. And then you can decide whether or not that's something you're even interested in, and whether or not you can be developed for that, or if there's some other role here you might be interested in. So I've spoken to so many groups throughout the US, and every now and again, I don't care if there's 25 people in the room or 150 people in the room, if I say, raise your hand if you got up thinking, how can I be a loser today? Nobody, maybe there's a wise guy, but nobody else will raise their hand. So let's pretend most humans want to feel like they're making a contribution, like they want to be successful, they want to please, they want to do well. Who wants to come into a job where you're disappointing people day in and day out?
Yeah.
You're not doing them any favors, keeping them in that role. It's almost cruel. So let's let them understand what's needed in the future. Let them have some say in it. And if they say, I think it's time for me to retire, or maybe it's time for me to go someplace else, now we can work out a transition plan. Let's figure out how to keep you here while you're looking for a new job and while we're looking for somebody to replace this. And you may need to teach them how to do some of the things you've been doing that are going to stay with the job. A lot of times we found that if somebody had been a good performer in the past, what usually happens is they came in and they were so good. They're like, oh my gosh, Ryan, you're amazing. Hey, can you do this too? And can you do this? And how about this? Oh yeah. So now it looks like this old banana split they used to have at, Dairy Queen. Nobody in their right mind would take that job on from the outside. And oh, by the way, you haven't been giving them compliments since they first came on board. So they're still doing those things, hoping they're going to get compliments again. And it's impossible to do all this stuff. They don't know what to stop doing, much less what to start doing. So sometimes just getting clarity around the role is kind of like, oh, I didn't know.
What I like about what you said too is instead of creating all those scorecards for the company right now, which provides a lot of opportunity for conflict of like, you did this, you didn't do this, or what about all the past and all that kind of crap. It's reframing it to say, here's where the company's going. So you're taking it away from me versus Cyndi versus us versus the future, and then coming up with a plan together. What about like, maybe I'm searching for something and I don't know exactly how to articulate it. Is like, there are quite a few of my clients where we have a high guess that they could do something. So let's say we have to clarify the scorecard. Let's say we do all this work and then people are weak in certain areas. But if the timeline is appropriate, we feel like we could put some building blocks in place to have it like as a mutual test of like, and I don't know what it is. If there's like, are there certain like soft skill coaching that you like, or like ways to go find the hard skill coaching? Like, because if it's really just the two buckets of the soft skill and the hard skill, and we feel like the person's got the internal goods to lean in, What's an objective way or different resources that you've come across that are capable of filling that void?
So the hard skills usually would mean experience in the role, leading some projects, things like this. The organization can usually train those things.
And or go to find like whether it's their product or their service or like their industry stuff or like there's certain schooling or certain things to. I think that that makes sense.
Yeah. You're really not going to change somebody's workplace motivators. So if someone does not have a high utilitarian and they're in a high utilitarian environment, you can heighten their awareness. We've got one woman who works for us, really, really sharp, great contributor, compassionate as hell when it comes to the coaching. She's got a lower utilitarian. I said, okay, there's 2 times this is going to become a problem. I have a huge sense of urgency, both from behaviorally and because of my high utilitarian. So there's a good chance I'm going to want something faster than you think you need to turn it around. If I am not clear on due date or how many hours dedicated to this project, you need to ask me. Because if you don't ask me, it's your fault. So that was one. And then there was also, because we have to be efficient with time that we use with our clients, but and if I have a new person coming on board, we don't charge the clients more because it takes them longer. That's an investment that we're making in their training. But at some point, you can't be compassionate and go, I'm going to just do this work for the client and not charge them, because then I can't charge them. Yep. So I'm paying you and not charging them. So that doesn't fly. So, and they're like, well, I didn't charge you either. I'm like, yeah, but I still didn't make the money off of that.
Yeah.
So, still a problem. So I think there's some cases where you can just heighten awareness, and usually that's around motivators or behaviors. There's other times, and we use both of those when we're helping a team understand how to work together better, because understanding both of those is critical. Behaviors alone is not enough. You can absolutely develop the personal skills from the Hartman profile. You can absolutely develop leadership skills. There's a lot of things that can be developed, but not everything. You're not going to show
I think I think you did a good job answering that, because if I can regurgitate, where it's like, it's the internal things that are fundamental to that human being that have to match up with the role, the size of the company, the tasks and the outcomes, and that whole scorecard that you just talked about. So you're mapping, and like if there are certain of those foundational personality things, I don't know whatever word to use, because I know it's all that it's very dynamic. Those are the gotchas where if it's, hey, you've never led a bigger team before, maybe there's things that can be that can be developed over time, and hard skills being very obvious. One of the, finance, you can go to finance, you can go to a lot of different trainings, but it's really the gotchas to watch out for are those mismatches of the internal motivation, the workplace motivators that I'm hearing. If the person is locked in their scorecard, and you can map it against what someone, so therefore doing the internal assessments of all the internal people.
Right. Critical thinking can also be developed, but it takes a lot of time. So if someone is dumb as a pet rock,
get them out shoveling snow or something.
You're going to have a heck of a time really grooming them to develop that critical thinking.
Is that an output of one of the assessments? Is like, that's you are a pet rock?
Yeah. It's the Watson Glacier critical thinking test.
Welcome. You are a chia pet. Thank you very much.
So it's a 40 question test, and it's a test. There's right and wrong answers. And you can't find the answers online. You can find a way to, if you want to spend 2 to 3 hours learning how to improve your critical thinking, ChatGPT can help you learn how to perform better on it, but it's not going to give you the answers. You can't find it.
So, yeah, keep going into this. I can talk about this.
So what's interesting, it's a 40 question test. We've never seen a 40 out of 40. Maybe we saw 2 39s. Like anything over a 28 tells us this individual can contribute to initiate strategic conversations in an executive team. We're good to go.
That's fantastic.
25, 26, 27, there's something magical about hitting 20. that they can follow along, but they're not necessarily going to initiate.
Which test is this?
The Watson-Glaser critical thinking test.
This is so huge. What you just said, I think right there is like the one thing that we're all trying to figure out, which is that 28, it sounds like 28 on this test, because what I was going to say a little bit ago.
Well, it depends on the role.
Yeah, but I'm fair. I'm thinking about, because I like the, I have people where they've got skilled labor shortage, or they got, rank and file, but like in the elevate phase for the owner's operating system, it is the C-suite and then eventually the CEO replacement.
Yes.
All of this stuff is appropriate for everybody, but like when I look at, and this is more just like we can riff off this because I'm really curious on your thoughts, is AI has been just such there was like the before and the after moment for me. And for me, what has been like crazy apparent that was unique for me as an observation I didn't see coming is like, I didn't really understand what critical thinking was, to be honest, prior to all of this. And it was like so obvious to me what I should be using GPT with it, which is everything. It's everything. And then I sit there and go, I cannot believe there are people not using this from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep. Outside
There's still people terrified of it.
Well, most people. And like I heard someone say, like it was my go-to for watching AI and the conversations on AI is Peter Diamandis on moonshots. He wrote the book Bold and Abundance, and it's amazing. And he said something like, if you use AI, the hell was it? It was, these stats were insane. It was all of this research and these surveys that they did. If it's like more than 2 hours a day and you're in the 2%, and if you use it for like 5 hours a week or something like that, you're 5% or something like. So here's where I'm going with this, Cyndi, is that what my clients are like, when I think about building out the C-suite, it's this ability to think into the future, be okay with ambiguity, but like having, like, it's first principles thinking. Like, here's where we're trying to go for our revenue, our strategy. How the hell are we going to get there? And like the GPT or Grok or Gemini helps us with the how. And we just know how to like just constantly just ping it and refine. And on that podcast, Cyndi, they were talking about how human beings, this is fascinating to me. I listened over the weekend, is human beings are end to end. From idea down to execution. GPT and AI is middle to middle. And I was just like, that is freaking brilliant how they frame that up, but the middle to middle is only possible if you've got the critical thinking up top, because otherwise you're just output. And so this also lends into the, Eric Schmidt from Google, and then Henry Kissinger wrote this book about AI, which is, I don't know, there's a lot to be said about it, but that there will be like 2% of the population controlling the AI, and then everybody else is working for the AI that the 2% develop. But like, we're looking for these people at the C-suite to think.
So because this is a big riff.
It's a loaded topic.
Is this okay? Do we have more time?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Actually, can we take a 2-minute break?
I've just, we can do that. And just as a heads up, I got a call at 4. So yeah, let's take a 2-minute break and then we'll come back.
All right, okay. I'll be right back.
All right, there you go.
All right. So I'm going to show you something in the assessments that helps you see how I can measure this. But what you also have to understand is, while we are huge proponents of leveraging AI, there are two issues we have in the average person's ability to critically think. The first is COVID, and the second is AI. So let me share my screen for a second. For anybody who wants
I'm so fascinated in this topic because it's.
So if we click on assess soft skills, you're going to actually see sample assessments here. So this is the critical thinking test. If there's one thing I could do, I would white out all this blue stuff. Do not pay attention to the continuums. You want to pay attention to the raw score that we talked about.
And this is the Watson one?
Watson-Glaser critical thinking test. Mm-hmm. So we want to pay attention to the raw score. This person's a 32 out of 40, which is really strong. And this is the subscale performance. So 8 out of 12 times, he reads between the lines well. He understands what's meant, just not, which is just said. Evaluating arguments, he can understand looking at a situation, which are the most important components without their personal biases coming into play. And 13 out of 16 times, he draws the right conclusions. Great.
God, this is so, like, I've never taken one of these tests. These would be fascinating.
I'm not giving you this one.
There's the call to action.
So one comical thing I'll tell you is, so we know that 28 or higher, 25, 26, 27, these are people who can follow along, but they won't necessarily initiate strategic thinking, but they can be developed to do that. That's not that far off. Below a 24, there's at least some times when you're going to help them connect the dots.
Okay.
If it's below a 20, I keep telling people, if my dog walked across my keyboard, like, the odds are good he'd score a 20. So if somebody didn't score 20 because they're dumb as a pet rock, or they didn't care enough to put effort into this, or they allowed for interruptions and coming and going, even though they're instructed several times not to do that, any one of those three things is a problem for an employee.
Anyways, yeah. So how is this different than an IQ test?
There's a lot of arguments about IQ tests. Technically, IQ tests, last I heard, were not to be given past second grade, because you need to understand what someone's raw intelligence is versus what they've learned.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't really care.
Rote memory. Yeah, rote memory.
We don't really care. We want to know, how do they think?
Right. That's, yep.
All right. So now we're going to go past this, and I'm going to blow down to the last page. So just, there's 26
all
pages.
good. Yep. So fascinating.
So this is the Hartman profile. It looks at the worldview. It is the only assessment that I know out there that's based on a deductive science, which means most assessments are based on an inductive science, meaning they ask about your preferences and using inductive reasoning, try to figure out how you think.
Mm-hmm.
This one actually looks at how do you think about this statement relative to this one, and they ask you to rank order two sets of statements from good to bad. How do you view the world, and how do you view yourself? And there are a third of them that are people related. There's a third of them that are task related, and there's a third of them that are systemic. Okay.
Super fascinating.
So when it comes to C-suite especially, I'd like them to have some people awareness, and we can get into an emotional intelligence conversation, another podcast, because that's his own.
Well, there we go. We'll have to do round two.
We look for, if someone's in a leadership role, for the systems judgment and the practical thinking to be above 80 and to be within 10 points of each other. Within 5 points of each other. They consider that well-developed and well-balanced, meaning that when something happens, I can see the big picture and I understand which buttons and levers to push and pull in order to get the desired results simultaneously.
Ooh, I love that.
One of these is higher than the other. Pretend the practical thinking was higher, and you draw a little stick figure on there. They're perceiving the other dimensions from that paradigm. So if the task piece is higher, they have to line up all there's an oak tree, there's a maple, there's some shrub. Oh, it's a forest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If the system's judgment is higher than the tasks by law, you can have someone who gets the big picture, who can talk a great story, no clue how to get there. So when it came to COVID and people were working remotely, not business owners, I'll explain that in a minute, but people who are working remotely for long periods of times, they became very focused on the tasks. And the brain is like any other muscle. If it's not used, it'll atrophy. So that when the systemic part of the brain starts to atrophy, all I'm focused on is the task. And that's why, to the point where it would send me crazy. I would go nuts when I'd hear somebody saying, I'm so more productive when I'm home. I'm calling bullshit. Because what you're telling me is you have a list, and as soon as you can get stuff done off your list, you can
Dopamine.
go golfing, you can take the dog for a walk and go shopping, but all I got to do is get my stuff done off my list. There's no systemic stuff. Nobody who was doing that for a year or more ever looked at their list and said, why do the same 3 things keep coming up on my list? I need
Right.
to do root cause analysis. Maybe I'll call Ryan, see if we can work on this together. Maybe pilot a solution, see if we can, and then release it to the rest of the organization. That doesn't happen. So that whole systemic piece is dropping. And so that's going to affect the critical thinking.
And that really comes into light at the coffee and cooler conversations and the hallway and all that stuff, because that's quantifying where that systemic thinking actually happens.
Yes. Yep. The other thing with AI is we all do it. Something comes up. Well, let me ask chat. And I go and ask chat. I don't bother thinking about it. I'm asking chat. So at what point am I sacrificing the speed of a quick answer from AI versus deducing something?
I think that is so well framed, Cyndi. And I'm learning a lot more about myself as I am going on this AI journey, building out the ownership operating system and doing all this stuff. Cause like what I've learned about myself, and I inherently don't believe things. And I inherently have an insatiable thirst for first principles. So when I say first principles, like I have to understand what is the root cause. My brain cannot function if I don't understand how it all ties together, which not shockingly, everything is time and cash. We have time and we drop dead and everything is more cash. It's like, that's how the world works. And so therefore every single thing ties to predicting cash by the end of 2026. And so I say that because when I'm using AI, I never believe it because I'm taking my knowledge of first principles.
It hallucinates for sure.
Yeah, and the only way we can see if it hallucinates is if we understand the first principles. And a couple examples of this and is like when Elon talks about physics, it's like there's like a closed system there. Like you can't get around the laws of physics and you can't get around the laws of finance. Like you will either have cash or not. The derivatives market and the whole financial engineering of America, guess what? We're still bankrupt and we still are, printing 8% a year. So we're eroding our value. And so my point is, when I go into a company and I'm looking at all of their strategies, their financials, their comp plans, their client acquisition costs, their customer marketing, their like everything has to tie to more cash. So if it doesn't have that through line, I'm providing AI with the first principle understanding, say, this is where we're going. This is the closed loop. This has to be true. Then all of the what ifs in between, that middle to middle, become the ideas that I wouldn't have been able to come up with. And then what's the pros and cons of the risk of each of those, and then the path and all that stuff. But there was an article this morning in one of the AI newsletters that I follow, and they call it, I don't know if you saw it, they call it workplace slop.
No, I didn't.
So AI slop is what they're calling it. And VCs are seeing it with their pitch decks because the people that they don't know what the hell they're talking about. So when I say that it's almost the K-shaped economy with AI, where it's now more apparent to me than ever, the people that actually can think, because they understand first principles, and that you're quantifying it for me right now with this chart to say there's a way to measure that, because then you can use AI. But if you don't know what you're using it for, it's like going into your car and saying, I want to go to a hotel, but not specifying the destination, the timeline, the budget, and all that stuff. And then just hoping that you just get in the car and get there. And you're quantifying through this critical thinking test ways to measure what I'm trying to explain.
Right. And the reason we use multiple sciences, so there's different nuances. So to your point, your passion around understanding the first principles is this up arrow. So when there is a positive bias on the system's judgment, it's somebody who really likes it when everything fits together.
Yeah, that sums me up.
Let me warn you about your clients, some of your clients, not all of them. When there is a down arrow, It is somebody who is suffocated by having everything fit together. And they have to stir stuff up just to make it more interesting. We call them chaos creators.
That's my father.
Where are most chaos creators able to work?
What do you like? As in, like they're their own entrepreneur and they're just
yes. Who else is going to employ them? They're I'm tracking it. Yeah. Or they do outside sales where nobody sees the chaos they're creating.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, because okay, this is super fascinating to me. And time check, I've got 8 minutes, so everybody will be wrapped up here shortly. But here's the belief that I have, and because this is the world I want to live in, so I'm trying to engineer it. So I was never like this because I grew up with my father, who is absolutely like light shit on fire. There was no org chart for 115 people. I mean, like it was just fly by the seat of our pants to build a $20 million business out of the back of our van. And I like that actually. Like I'm very comfortable in chaos and I absolutely love it. But what I learned through my family business experience is the negative consequences of that. And I was like, F this. Because eventually that chaos was going to swallow me up and spit me out, and it sucked. So then what I did is I figured out, so here's my analogy is I spent a disproportionate amount of time clarifying the puzzle picture, flipping all the puzzle pieces up, putting the framework together so I can put all the pieces together in a messy fashion. And so it's like this, the order is the system around it, so I can be a crazy person inside of it.
So you can be creative within it. That creativity is coming from a different science. Okay. Once you have, but the other thing is when you take this, it is likely this is going to be a mixed bias, which is going to look like this. And mixed bias usually happens one of two ways. Either somebody is humming along fine, everything's fine, and every now and again they have to go off the reservation, or they have been raised in chaos and they are a chaos survivor having a preference for structure and order.
And it's so fascinating you say that, because I think there is a lot to be said about the people you and I work with who are listening to this podcast who are also that, which is like, I was in rigidity or I was something where I'm professionally unemployable. And then because I'm professionally unemployable, I went and did this. But I believe, and I'm watching this unfold in real time, that as people put these, and that's what I think EOS was missing, is the wrapper around it, which is the ownership operating system. Say, hey, here's the actual outline of the puzzle. You can do whatever the hell you want inside of this, but know if you do these things, you have less cash. Or if you do these things, you have more time. Or if you do these things, it impacts your valuation. So like, I don't care what you do, but there was another guy that said on one of my podcasts, it's a blank canvas, but there's a canvas.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. That's cute. I like
this. Has been a blast.
Thanks, Ryan. This time went by really fast. I was wondering what all we were going to talk about, but we didn't run out, did we?
No, we didn't. I learned a lot. I'm sure people did. I will put the links to your website, which is what we were screen sharing. You have a ton of material out there. Highly recommend people going and reaching out to you. Any other final words or like best way to get in touch, or what's the approach that you take with working with people?
Best way is figure out, everybody's got talent issues. It's either I can't get the right people or I can't get enough out of them. And as you said, that we just haven't been producing enough humans for decades. So this isn't going away in 5 years.
Yeah.
So unless you believe at ITR and it's all going to come crashing. But there are ways you can go to our website. We've created a lot of video, a lot of blogs that try to answer the questions you're asking. So go check that out. And then one of the collaboration things that happened here was we realized that one or two of our really silly YouTube videos, I was just talking about how hot it was and everybody playing around with the damn thermostat. And so I did this thing on Thermostat Wars. It had more views than I can imagine. And so then our whole marketing team, we're collaborating. We're literally around a table. And we're like, why do we get this on this? We don't get it on that. And how do we not take away from our thought leadership? So we have developed, I don't know if you saw it, but now the great Cyndi.
Those are the emails that I'm getting?
Yeah. So we created a bunch of satire shorts on real things that have happened in the workplace and all the things we wish we could say to those people who did those stupid things.
That's fantastic.
That seems to be having quite a view. But seriously, we love giving our clients a better night's sleep around the talent issues. There can be more predictability. It doesn't have to be rolling the dice every time. So
that's a great place to end. Cyndi, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a lot of fun.
Looking forward to it. See ya. Thanks.